I'm Claire Dyer, and this is Dire Consequences here on Unprecedented TV, where we like to give a voice to those who are silenced and censored from social media and any form of social media platform or mainstream media platform. And my guest that will be coming up in a few minutes knows only too well what it's like to be censored from all social media platforms apart from Telegram. This is due to his talk about conspiracy theories, whether it be truth or is it a theory? And that's what we were going to be talking about today. So originally, the term dates back to the late 1800s, used in legal, political, and academic context. Nowadays, it has far more stigma attached. After the assassination of JFK, public skepticism grew and exploded against the official narrative. So in 1967, the CIA circulated a memo to counter growing public distrust. They did this by the aim was to discredit any form of alternative narrative associating these people and labeling them as conspiracy theories through irrationality and paranoia, regardless of the evidence. Today, we were going to be talking to a man who has been very well known within the freedom movement, especially over the last 5 years, but is a self-professed conspiracy theorist for 30 years. And we like to welcome to the show today, Michael Manuel Chaves, aka Mad Mick's Conspiracies. Hello, Mick.
Good evening, Claire. Oh, no, sorry. Good morning, Claire. How are you today? Thank you for having me on the show, first of all.
You're welcome. You always have a lot to say. I've always watched your channel, and you will talk about anything and everything, and you don't care what people think about what you say. Whether it's truth, whether, as you said, it's conspiracies that you like to make up yourself just to wind people up. But the first question is, because obviously you've been awake or a conspiracy theorist for 30 years now. What was it that made you realize that maybe some things weren't truth?
I'll tell you the truth, Claire. It started off, it's got to be 30 odd years ago. When I came out of school, I went to college, I did engineering, and I got my BTEC in engineering. I never went on to work in engineering, but as a young man, early 20s, I went on holiday to Egypt. And I was walking around the Great Pyramid and, all the pyramids actually in Egypt and along the Nile. And I couldn't work out in my mind how it got there, how these stones, in some cases, 100-ton stones were moved and were able to be placed so high up. And it made me think that this is really weird. So I bought a lot of books back then, mainstream books on pyramids and how the pyramids were built and all that. And a lot of the mainstream books, they didn't give me the answers. So then obviously I moved into a more alternative look at how they may have got there. And I don't believe many of these things, but it ranges from aliens to levitation technology to all sorts of magic. And that started me on a journey where I was literally questioning everything. And from there, it went on to JFK and the assassination of JFK. That one was fascinating to me. The amount of gunmen they had in place on the day. Then clearly the moon landings. And this is all in the days before YouTube. So all this had to be done by book. You had to read books and go to libraries. You remember libraries? They're them places where they actually keep books.
Our councils are shutting all these places down, all these community assets, so we probably won't have them for much longer. But yeah.
Well, everyone's got a mobile phone now. We're all tracked and traced, and they know exactly what books we're reading online and stuff. We'll probably get into that as the conversation goes on. But yeah, that's where it started back in the late 80s, I think, and then it developed from there. But I didn't start my YouTube channel till 2017. I was ill for a while. I was in a wheelchair, and there wasn't much I could do, you know. So what I did do was sit in front of my phone, much like I am now, and talk about conspiracies on YouTube. And then the channel got quite popular over the 3 years until 2020. And then, as you know, it all exploded then, because 2020 was like the gift that kept on giving. For a conspiracy theorist, it was relentless. It didn't stop. So I was loving it. I was loving the every day I had something different to talk about, you know, from politicians, Matt Hancock, to magic medications, that once you get this, you can all go back to work, you can all go back to school, we'll have this magic medication and everything will be fine in the world. And then they had their magic medication and we couldn't go back to school and we couldn't go back to work. Oh, well, no, then you'll need another one. No, one more, and then you can go back to school and work. No, 6 more.
Yeah. It's funny because I can even remember like posts sort of 5-6 years ago and having, I would say, that psychological conditioning of, you know, the term conspiracy theorist linked to, crazy people. And then for me 5 years ago, it was one thing, which obviously was COVID, and what that the politicians and our prime minister and our mainstream media were telling us. And I thought, well, I know that particular thing you're telling me is not true. And that was all it took. So therefore, you just started questioning everything. And then as the time has gone by, I get labeled a conspiracy theorist. It gets thrown around so easily now because it's a real easy way to shut down anyone who speaks out about anything that counteracts the narrative. But now, looking back, as time's gone on, I can even now see what you're talking about with JFK. Not that I've researched that much about it, but, you know, even 9/11. So would you say that the attacks on 9/11 were an inside job, and were the US government already aware beforehand? What's your answer, or what you've learned from that?
Well, 9/11 is one of my favorites, and 9/11 is divided with conspiracy theorists that are pushing the narrative of it being exploded, the building was blown up, when in reality, what I've seen, the evidence I've seen from a fantastic reporter, her name's Dr. Judy Woods, hence the doctor at the front of the word. She looked into it, and her book is massive. The videos she's made are incredible. The conspiracy world have shunned her, but she's put forward that the towers were in actual fact brought down by directed energy weapons, and they were turned to dust. There was very little rubble for buildings that were that tall. There was hardly any rubble. The buildings were quite literally turned to dust. But the only things that didn't turn to dust was paper. At the end of it, like, there was white sheets of paper all over the place, but pretty much everything else that was in the building was turned to dust by these directed energy weapons. Even the cars in the local area, cars that were parked nearby, they were just, the metal had rotted away. It was just crazy. So I've read Judy Wood's book. I've looked at a lot of stuff on 9/11, and I very much believe myself that Judy Wood's theory is the most accurate theory from the evidence that I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know. It gets to a point where sometimes you don't know what's real and what is fake. You know, we have AI technology now. I would say, looking at it, it looked like a controlled demolition, basically. And I wonder, you know, a building made, how a plane could actually take a whole building down. So knowing that our own governments around the world do lie to us, I now have to question everything, whether I know what the truth is or not. I have to now be open-minded and think, well, actually, it's possible. There's a lot of evidence that would suggest that there was another motive.
Absolutely, Claire. I agree with that. And I've had this, like, my channel, look, see the t-shirt, Mad Mix Conspiracies.
I can also see your dog in the background. I can see some legs and head.
Oh, yeah. That's an upside down Keith. There's a portrait of him over there. Off track now. Yeah, once you realise that the people in power are prepared to lie to you about something as massive as that, then it's very difficult to take anything on face value after that. Like, you can't help believing that pretty much everything you've been told through your whole life is a lie. And I'm talking about World War II. I'm talking about space, NASA. I'm talking about Donald Trump, the whole works, everything, the war, the two wars that are going on at the moment, everything you have to look at and you think, how much of what I'm seeing, both on mainstream media and on social media, because social media is rampant with untruths. And like you say, AI videos all over the place. So now we live in a world where you don't even know what you can believe.
I know, and I think that makes it now really confusing for people. You know, they spend so much time trying to, really depict what is fact, what is fiction, what is real, what isn't. A lot of the time, you're just left confused. So all of the stuff that is actually happening sort of flies under the radar. Because you're distracted all the time. We get a lot of misinformation on our own side, as well as from obviously mainstream media and the government. So I think we are living in a very sort of, scary world as to how do you know what is real. I'm going to ask you about the moon landing. Do you believe that was fake or was that real in 1969?
I believe that it was incredibly fake. The video evidence again that I've seen, and like you said, the video evidence that we see could have all been faked as well. You know, the photos I've seen of the moon landings could all be fake, but it looks so incredibly unreal. But I did watch a fascinating video the other day that was about trying to land allegedly they've landed all these stuff on Mars and they can travel around Mars and take samples and take photos. Well, they've realized, and they've tried so many times to actually land a probe, but not a probe, an orbit or whatever they call them things, just to land one on the moon. And every time they try, it keeps crashing. And that's an unmanned probe. But with the moon landings, it worked first time every time. But you try it without somebody on board and they can't do it. And like they just crash, they fall over. It's hilarious to watch. And it makes you think now, like you're watching this stuff now. This is all what countries are trying to do now. And you're like, well, if they can't do it now, how did they do it 60 years ago? You know, and that's the scary thing, that when you realize that like NASA have said themselves in their briefings, we used to have the technology to go to the moon in the 60s, but now we've lost that technology. I'm like, I barely had a house phone in the 60s, and now I've got a computer in my pocket, but you've lost the technology to get back to the moon. So I believe the moon landing was very definitely fake. I believe that NASA is involved in a big way in black ops. I'm not going to go full UFOs and aliens. I'm not sure that I actually am convinced, although I do think that there is something that we don't know about and something that they're trying very hard to keep secret from us. And one day I would love to know about it in my lifetime, but I'm not one of these aliens are invading the world type of conspiracy theorist. I'm more of a everybody's lying to us type of conspiracy theorist.
I actually find the whole thing very, very confusing. There's some things that I just haven't read up enough about to say that I could categorically have a statement and say, I believe that's fake or I believe that's real. I just know that I was brought up, and I'm going to use the word indoctrinated, believing that, yes, 100%. I'm not even going to question it. We landed on the moon. Yes, 100%. You know what happened with 9/11 and JFK. I just would have automatically bought and believed whatever I was told until 2020. And even 3 years ago, I still thought, in my opinion, was, yeah, chemtrails, that's conspiracy theory. So although I'm being labelled a conspiracy theorist for my thoughts on COVID, which I wholeheartedly believe in because I researched all of it, and I just knew they were lying, I still thought even chemtrails was, until I thought, you know what, I am going to start looking into this because I have got to question everything. How do I know that chemtrails is a conspiracy theory? So now I probably am a conspiracy theorist under that term, because I honestly do believe in chemtrails. And I'm going to ask you the same question. Do you believe in chemtrails and that they're spraying the skies?
Well, Claire, it's funny you should mention that, because I can categorically give you my truth, which is proof to me 100% that chemtrailing is real. And I'm going back way before 2020. Chemtrailing that I've known about has been going on since the 90s. But many years ago, I was on holiday in Turkey in a place called Bodrum. And I was laying on the beach, laying at the hotel pool, day in, day out, right? And all you're doing when you're laying at the pool is looking at the sky. And every day, this is a small place, Bodrum, every day, one aeroplane flew in, landed at the airport, let people on and off, and then a few hours later, the same aeroplane flew out. And that's all you saw day after day. Until this one day I'm laying there and I watched the same aeroplane spray the sky from the minute I got up in the morning and noticed it until it got dark that night. The same aeroplane had been spraying the sky over Bodrum. And then the next day, nothing, no aeroplanes, the same, one in, one out. So that proved to me it was like one of them
light bulb
moments. I'm like, oh my God, it's real. I've just watched it with my own eyes.
Yeah.
You know, and where we live in England, it's very difficult because we live between Gatwick and Heathrow. We got Stansted up the road, we got Luton up the road, and we are in a flight path where we see 100 aeroplanes an hour, literally, depending what part of the country you live in. You could see 100 an hour. And it's very difficult to say, yes, some of them are spraying and some of them are not. But when you're in an airspace where there's no aeroplanes, and then all of a sudden you see what I saw, for me, that was confirmation 100%. But that's only my truth. And that can't be anyone else's truth. I can't make someone else see what I saw or necessarily believe what I say, because I'm a prime one for not believing anybody. I am self-confessed incredulous. And I believe that everybody who I speak to is going to lie to me for one reason or another, you know. And I've learned that in what we could call the anti-vax movement. You know, I've been an anti-vaxxer since 2020. And I've learned that everyone is trying to lie to you. And then they're generally trying to sell you a bill of goods as well. Yeah. You know, me and you have been to places together, shoulder to shoulder, where people on social media have convinced other normal human beings to stop paying their mortgages.
Yeah.
And then they've had their houses repossessed. And me and you have been stood there trying to stop the bailiffs from repossessing someone's house, knowing that when we go home and when we're tucked up nicely in bed, the bailiffs are just going to come back and repossess the house.
Yeah.
But idiots on social media have been telling people, oh, you don't have to pay your mortgage. You're a free man of the land. You're a common law, whatever. And you don't have to pay your bills anymore. Well,
I was going to say, this is the problem. There is misinformation on both sides. So it makes it very hard to be able to work out what is true and what isn't. And I think it takes a real strong critical mind. I mean, just going back to chemtrails, as I said, you know, I didn't believe it. I believed it was a conspiracy theory. And I can't claim to have 20 years research in, obviously, you know, planes, the sky or anything like that. But the world that I have obviously shifted into, I do know of these people. You know, somebody who's pretty much an expert or has studied and researched in a lot of these things. And for me, it was the same thing. I just started looking and looking up. And I just thought, you can tell the difference. And I remember saying to somebody, who I would say 2 years ago didn't believe it. And I was having sort of, I'm not going to say arguments, but debates with them, obviously, as people like us do when we're trying to awaken people to what's going on in the world in general. And I said, but hold on a minute. They're saying, oh, no, that's not true. And I said, but they spray the skies in Dubai when they haven't had rain for a long time by obviously flying drones or planes up into the cloud? And they went, oh, yeah, they've been doing that for years. And I went, but they're not doing it anywhere else in the world. So if they have the technology and they've been telling you that they've been doing it for years in Dubai, why would you think that they wouldn't be doing it anywhere else and for their own agenda? And now we have them telling us that they're going to start dimming the sun. I believe they're already doing it. But now they're telling us. They always have to tell us after the fact. And then that does move on to COVID, and it moves on to the World Economic Forum. I mean, do you remember, I don't know, myself, 3-4 years ago saying, this is an agenda. You've got Agenda 20, Agenda 30, the World Economic Forum, and everyone's going, that's a conspiracy theory. Now they're telling us for the last year, and no one's questioning it now. So they always tell you after the fact.
Yeah. And you know what's mad? Like, as a conspiracy theorist, we sit back and now we're like, see, told you so. Because all the stuff we've been saying, like when Sir Keir Starmer openly says that because of climate change, we're going to block out the sun and we're going to use aerosols out the back of aeroplanes to do it. And like your jaw just drops. You're like, we've been telling them that. But the thing with me, Claire, is that if Sir Keir Starmer's telling me it's to block out the sun, then straight away I don't believe him because he's a politician liar. So what is it really for? What's the real reason? Because they'll never tell us the real reason. They know that now everybody knows it's happening, so they have to give a reason. But I bet that's not the real reason.
So as you were saying, once they started coming out with these truths, and I've heard this said by a lot of people that have been awake, for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, because they're like, how do you think we feel? We've been awake for years. You've only just been awake for a couple. And I'm kind of like, well, you should be pleased now that there's more of us. So I try to say to people, do you really think that millions and millions of people around the world just suddenly woke up one day and went mad and went crazy and all started spouting the same thing? Because it actually does originate with that one light bulb moment. For you, it was researching about Egypt 30 odd years ago. For me, obviously, it was COVID. For a lot of people, they're still waking up, and they're waking up to the current agenda. And then they're going back over things because, like you said, when you realize they've lied, you start questioning everything. And then you suddenly have a different viewpoint. So for all of you that have been awake for all of this time and then moving into 2020, you must have felt like now you weren't so alone. And then, what did you then move on to in 2020? What did you start doing actively with direct action?
Our direct action back in 2020 was, first of all, many of us gathered together, were trying to go against the lockdown rules. You will not lock us in our home. You will not tell us how many people we can stand in the street with. And that's where me and you first met all them years ago at a stand in the park. And then we come together, and what we were doing back in those days as well, apart from going to massive protests in London and arguing with the police an awful lot, I'll get back to the protests in a second. We were holding yellow boards, with slogans on, trying to warn people that.
And that's what we do now.
Yeah, well, yes, I've seen you do it, and that started way back in the COVID days, where we were trying to warn people of the dangers of taking an untested medication, and that was all I was concerned about back in those days. I was concerned about what ramifications, what side effects could happen to people taking a medication that's been rushed out in less than 8 months. And that was my biggest concern. and trying to stop people from partaking in that when they told us, like from the government sources themselves, that people of my age, if you're not an elderly person with medical conditions, you have a very low chance of getting ill from this thing. But this medication will protect Granny in the old folks home. But you can't go and visit Granny in the old folks home. So why are you taking it anyway? You know, and it was questions like this that were driving me mad. So that's where the activism started. And back to the protest quickly. I'll probably get arrested for this one. So we were following what I now call the Pied Pipers, the government agents. They were put in place to lead us around London. We were following them on marches where the police said everything's okay, you can march down that way, and they did it, and they got their police permission, and it was all government handled. And I had had enough of it. When I realised the truth, what was going on within the movement, I had had enough, and I said on my channel, I'm done with this. I'm not going to any more of these set up protests. People on my channel messaged me in the comment section, Mick, you've got a big following, you do something. It has to be done during the week. Keep walking around London on a Saturday isn't working. So I had to put my money where my mouth was. You know, these people had literally called me out, you know, don't bitch about it, do something about it. So I decided on my channel that we were going to do it on Monday. We were going to block Parliament, but what we were going to do is just stay in Parliament Square and Downing Street. When Boris Johnson was making his announcement telling us that he was going to extend the lockdowns, I picked that date and we were all going to just stay in Parliament Square. Well, it spiraled out of control. I only had a few thousand people on my channel, so I couldn't have influenced that many people. But when we turned up in London on that day, there was tens of thousands of people. And I was like gobsmacked. I'm like, oh my God, look what I've done. You know, this is pretty amazing. And it was that day that put me on the police radar. So since that day, from that day through to the end of the COVID, we had a police escort. Most places we went, which was pretty good. They followed us around. They called us domestic terrorists, and they followed us around. You know, I said to them on some occasions, look, you're going to the same place as me. You might as well just give me a lift there. Save my petrol.
Well, listen, they give Antifa and Stand Up to Racism lift, and
I've seen it.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. All the paid protesters, like the George Soros, funded protests, they get carried. When we first met them at the libraries, when we did the drag queens at libraries, that's where we first came across Antifa. I think that was in 22, and they were being brought in by bus. It was hilarious. A big bus brought them in, and they all got off the bus, and then they come down with their masks, and they start abusing us and shouting at us. We were protesting peacefully.
And the mainstream media are there, of course, to get the all-important action picture for the front page news that then labels you guys as the far-right racists. And this tactic is constantly being repeated. And the funny thing is, every single point, even in the last 5 years, if you're against COVID, you're a conspiracy theorist. If you're against the vaccines, you're a conspiracy theorist. If you talk about the World Economic Forum or Agenda 30, you're a conspiracy theorist. If you say that there's controlled opposition and there's counter protesters that are paid and funded, you're a conspiracy theorist. Everything is labeled conspiracy theorist to shut you down.
And far right.
I mean, that's a much harsher label. Obviously,
like the newspapers have called me. That's what was unfortunate. Back in those days, I ended up on the news, on the BBC. You know, newspapers. They loved a little bit of controversy. And the crazy thing was, like you said, the word conspiracy theorist is an insult. They use that as an insult. So when they found someone who's called his own channel Mad Mix Conspiracies, well, they jumped all over that like it was the gift that kept on giving. You know, they're like, oh, wow, the leading anti-vaxxer, they called me the anti-vax leader, is a mad conspiracy theorist by his own admission. And I'm like, and they loved that. They jumped on that. So there was There was articles in the newspaper on the regulars, and when we was on the front page, I don't know if you remember the Keir Starmer. He came out of.
I was involved in that loosely.
I remember the night before. The night before, we were all at a meeting.
What was it? The convoy. The convoy. So the whole convoy.
No, not the convoy. I'm going back further. When Keir Starmer came out of. Where's the police place?
New Scotland Yard.
New Scotland Yard. And someone attacked him. The crowd attacked him.
That was after the convoy. The whole thing was set up. You could see
it. After the convoy. So I wasn't even there, you know. And that night we were at a Stand in the Park meeting. There was a big meeting that night of Stand in the Park. But one of our friends got arrested. And I said, like, well, we need to go down there and give this girl support. I weren't even in London during that day, but I went down that night, picked her up from the police cell, waited hours for them to let her go, picked her up, did an interview with her for my channel, and then dropped her home. Didn't think too much about it. Well, the next day, front page of all the newspapers, I had absolutely nothing to do with Keir Starmer getting attacked. I wasn't even there, and there's my photo on the front page of the newspapers. My landlord evicted me that day. He saw the newspaper and he said, I want you off my land by midday. And then, as they say, the rest is history. But all this happened because of the mainstream media jumping on the idea that I was some kind of mad terrorist, anti-vax leader.
We are actually now running out of time, and there is so much more I could talk to you about because we haven't even touched on your music. But there's someone who happily admits that they can't sing. You've got your own band.
Absolutely,
yep. Matt, what's it called?
Mad Mix and the Resistance.
Where you write your own songs, which is obviously about the agenda, whether it's
monkeypox, you name it. Yeah. Matt the Cock.
You're right, so far right.
Yeah.
Killer COVID. And we haven't even covered all of that because we could literally talk to you for forever. I mean, it's just
it's been an interesting 4 years.
Didn't even get to the point where the police were following you around absolutely everywhere, to the point they even followed you to the park to walk your dogs one time, didn't they?
Yeah, it was hilarious. It was hilarious.
They obviously thought you were the leader of every single movement, whether it's the anti-vax movement, the conspiracy theories movement.
I did kind of understand their logic, where they were coming from, because if, like, they had my car registration number and all that, if my car flagged up driving into someone's town that wasn't where I lived, then it would have flagged up as a marked car. And then they're like, well, what's this guy doing in our town? He's a protester. Where is there going to be a protest?
Yeah.
So their logic would be thinking that I was on my way to a protest. So they come out in the police cars following me to work out where I'm going for this protest. And like you say, I was just going to this particularly lovely wooded area where I was going to walk my dogs in the wood. Yeah. And they followed me there. I said to them, that was a bit of a waste of time, wasn't it, boys? I'm just walking my dogs. But they were still there when I come back, and they followed me out of town.
So to end on that note, even their theories have turned out to be nothing more than conspiracies, because they have got so much wrong about you.
Absolutely.
So that's all we've got time for. I'm so sorry. I would loved to have spoken to you for longer. But yeah, Mick has always got a lot to say. You can catch him on his own Telegram channel, which is Mad Mix Conspiracies, if you want to hear what he's got to say. He does not shy away from what is his truth. A lot of it is truth, but as he always says, it's his opinion, and it's merely his opinion. So conspiracies, they can be entertaining, they can be strange, they can be spooky, but they also make us think critically and to make us ask those questions. I always say, look up the term conspiracy and then look up the term theory. A secret plan for a group to do something unlawful or harmful. Theory, a system of ideas intended to explain something, especially one based on general principles independent of the things to be explained. Not everything is as it seems or is what we're told. Often they do actually turn out to be true. When do we actually know when we're being told the truth? When do we know when we're being told a lie? When we have, in fact, been told so many lies by our government and people in power and our mainstream media that it probably is best to question everything. So is everything actually a conspiracy theory? What I would probably say is to remember the only difference between a conspiracy theory is the truth, and the truth is about 2 to 5 years, because ultimately a lot of them end up coming true in that time. Anyway, that is all we have time for. This has been myself, Claire Dyer, on Dire Consequences here on Unprecedented TV. There are many more shows coming up. You will find us on YouTube and also on X. But thank you for tuning in, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Thank you.